Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien. Lead! And Livingston have the lead! Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team, Livingston Football Club, and proudly sponsored by Starnet Apparel. My name's Angus, and today, for the last time, I appear to be joined by Euan. Euan, how are you feeling, man?
I'm fighting back the tears, mate. Fighting back those tears. Nah, it's this episode will probably end up getting a little bit nostalgic at the end, because normally we finish our episodes off with talking player of the year, goal of the season, favourite moment. Let's be honest, this season isn't a season for talking about player of the year and all that sort of stuff. I think with it being our final episode of the season, but also our final episode as a podcast in general, I think it'll be nice to kind of look back at what has in general been a very good 6 years for ourselves on the podcast, but also a very good 6 years for the football club, arguably one of the most successful stints in the club's history. So we're trying to sign off on a little bit more of a positive note. However, we do need to cover a 5-1 defeat prior to getting there, and our women's side missing out on promotion, so kind of goes with the overall vibe of the season, if we're totally honest. It wouldn't be right if we made it all positive on this last episode, but yeah, it's obviously a bit bittersweet, but obviously we kind of touched on it when we put out a tweet. Circumstances have changed quite drastically for both yourself and I over the last 12 months, and it's just becoming a lot more difficult for those who kind of think it is just a 45 minutes or hour episode that goes out. There's a lot more work goes into it. I probably spend more time on this than I actually spend in my coaching job during the week, so I think
I hope your employers aren't listening.
But I mean, I coach for 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday morning, and I probably spend more time editing and putting this together and putting tweets together and making graphics and all that sort of jazz for during the week. So I don't think maybe some people maybe do appreciate just the amount of time that goes into what is a hobby. We don't make any money from this. We're not supported and financially doing this, so it is a kind of labour of love. But yeah, a little bit bittersweet, but hopefully we can reminisce about some really good times we've had doing the podcast as well. What about yourself, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, I can only echo that, and yeah, just basically say thanks to everybody who's kind of listened over the years and stuff like that. One last dance, I guess, is what they usually say and stuff like that. Luckily, due to the power of the internet, you can always search for Talk Livi on your preferred podcast streaming sites, where you can follow and subscribe, so you don't miss catching up on any of the episodes in the past. You can see them all there, and if you're ever feeling a little bit lonely, you can go back and you can listen to our tones over the last couple of years.
What better way to spend your summer whilst waiting for the football to kick off again?
I'm hoping to see Talk Livi compilations in the future, honestly.
But we'll kick this episode off by discussing how the Lions collapsed against Aberdeen at Pittodrie before a stalemate with Hibs closed the curtain on our stay in the Premiership.
It would be final day heartbreak for the Lionesses as they narrowly missed out on a playoff spot after defeat to Queen's Park.
And as we said, with this being our final episode, we get a little bit nostalgic and look over Livi's 6 years in the Premiership, as well as some of the highlights whilst doing the podcast.
the Lions made the 8-hour journey to Aberdeen in our last away game of the season, despite taking the lead for a penalty from Tetiengi. A capitulation from Livi saw the hosts stroll to a 5-1 victory in the end. Euan, not ideal for our last away game, was it?
Yeah, not ideal at all. And by the way, just a big shout out to the 25 or so Livingston fans that did make the journey up to Pittodrie. Credit to each and every one of you for heading up there and being witness to that final half hour. To be honest, that it kind of echoed a little bit of the St Johnstone game from Saturday, but the big difference being you could talk about, and we spoke about and gave the players a lot of credit for showing a bit of character to keep themselves in the game, despite being right up against it for large spells of the first half in particular. And you could kind of say that a little bit in the first half of this game, albeit I don't think Aberdeen maybe created the same quality of chances as St Johnstone had, but they still certainly had us under a lot of pressure in that opening 45 minutes. Hoylett had an opportunity, which Shamal George says Polvara misses an absolute sitter on the rebound. He really should be scoring. He hits the outside of the post. Duke had one that was deflected onto the post as well. Again, Hoylett has another opportunity. Shinnie has an opportunity after that. McGarry came pretty close with a long-range effort. And yeah, we were pretty lucky not to be behind in the opening kind of half hour of the game. But again, similar to the St Johnstone game, we gradually started to get a little bit more of a foothold and created a couple of openings ourselves. Montano had one, which Nicky Devlin managed to clear. Stephen Kelly broke in the middle of the park, had an effort which went over the bar. And we did get to half-time at 0-0 and then probably totally against the run of play in terms of the overall pattern of the game. We get the penalty. I know a lot of Aberdeen fans have been complaining about it, but it took me a good couple of looks. I was looking at where the ball ended up, probably when it goes to the back post, looking for the handball and thinking, what are they looking for here? But it wasn't until the kind of angles changed on what camera angle they were using for VAR that you saw it was from the initial header at the back post. And for me, it's a penalty. He's punched the ball with two hands. It's, in this day and age, that's going to be given as a penalty. And Tetiengi stepped up and emphatically rifled it into the top corner and were in front in the game, albeit not for particularly long. Junior Hoylett then scored a very good free kick. Shamal George did get fingertips to it, but wasn't able to keep it out. And we did have an opportunity to get back in front of the game. Stephen Kelly had one at the back post. He's probably one of the players you would want an opportunity like that to fall to, given he very good technically, very calm, but he kind of drags it wide, and then from then on in, it was the start of the capitulation. And some, to put it bluntly, once again, just pretty awful shambolic powder puff defending. there's no other way to put it. You can tell it's our last episode where we're going out with a bang and just calling it as it is. The Graham Shinnie goal, it's Jamie Brandon loses him on the edge of the box. He's got a free header. Michael Nottingham's caught under the ball for the actual corner as well. Polvara's goal, I think Dan Mackay gets spun too easily. You'd be looking at your goalkeeper at his near post to be doing a little bit better, Shamal George, in that instance. Then the fourth goal is probably the worst of the lot. It's a hospital pass by Sean Kelly into Stephen Kelly. It's been intercepted, and then Junior Hollett's been played in, and he puts it in between Shamal George's legs. And then you're looking at the last goal from the young lad Fletcher Boyd, who's 16, 17 years old and scored 2 goals in 2 games at the end of the season. So I'm sure Aberdeen fans will be really excited about the prospect of him getting more minutes next year. But his goals, again, it's just very standoffish, passive defending. And Shamal George is pretty static. I think he could do a lot better. Shots pretty central. I feel if he could easily get down for that, in my opinion. Albeit we had a couple of chances either side of that with Tetiengi, but it would have just glossed over what was a pretty bad capitulation in the end from ourselves. And it kind of sums up this second half of the season. I do think we've offered more on the front foot in games, and we did have some opportunities in the game. But defensively, this second half of this season has been pretty catastrophic at times, and there's been 2 or 3 occasions where we have had that sort of capitulation. Tynecastle springs to mind, that 15 minutes before half-time when we were 2-0 up, that last half hour at Pittodrie as well, that first kind of 20-25 minutes at Easter Road, where we've just been properly put to the sword and punished for just really slack, passive defending at times.
Not much more I can add. Game that's about a week ago now. I think I was at the gym, in all honesty, Euan. And the person I was with was like, "Oh yeah, or Livi getting beat." And at this point, we were 1-0 up, and I was like, rubbing it in. And then I checked the phone like half an hour later, and things had drastically changed for the worst. So yeah, not the ideal kind of way for us to bow out in our last away game, despite that little bit of hope that we had there. But yeah, as you say, poor defending again, costing us massively. That goal difference is taking even more of a hammering, and I guess that's the kind of thing that's been the big difference this season. Where I think the first couple of years that we're in the Premiership, it was only Celtic and Rangers who were maybe taking only 3 goals off of us. Look at it where we've conceded 4 to Dundee, 4 to Motherwell this year, 5 to Aberdeen. Hibs could have taken more if they wanted to on that day at Easter Road. Hearts have taken 4 off of you, and that's not even talking about Celtic and Rangers yet. So there's 6 of the teams already straight away. Throw in Ross County scoring 3 against you. Throw in, who else is in the league? Kilmarnock have taken 3 off of us in a game this season as well. It's like you're talking about basically most of the teams this season, apart from basically St Johnstone, who have absolutely put the sword to us. And yeah, it's no surprise to kind of see this happen, especially with dead rubber game at the end of the season. Some of their players' last games. Can't say I'm shocked.
Yeah, I think St Mirren are probably the only other team that haven't managed to hit us for 3 at one point or other in the season. So I think I used that as actually a stat one of the early times I was on Open Goal, and it was kind of comparing last season to the season before, the kind of season after COVID, and I used that as a stat, the amount of times we've conceded 3 or more in a game, and it was starting to it was those. And I used this last season when I went on podcasts. It was bad habits setting in. That's kind of set in the second half of the season, that almost capitulation, which you would have never seen us do before. And I know the manager spoke a lot at the start of the season about trying to make us more solid and harder to beat. Is there a way that you can almost understand his thinking? When we were playing a back 3 in the first half of the season, we have moved to a back 4, have tried to go for the game a little bit more. Has he maybe envisaged that we aren't good enough defensively, we need an extra body in there, and we maybe had to sacrifice a little bit more going forward? Is there a kind of element where you can almost defend them a little bit for that to a degree when you look at us defensively in the second half of the season?
I think because we still went on these kind of bad runs, a lot of those games where we conceded goals. I guess there's probably an element of not finding that at all, because like the good balance between it, because we went through that run where we set a record for most defeats without scoring a goal as well. So it's like we're still losing games and completely sacrificed any sort of attacking play. Yeah, I think that there's a lot to kind of look at it there, where he kind of went for it a bit more because he's had to, desperation more so, and then are the players already disillusioned, or out of confidence, or they out of form and stuff like that due to what's kind of transpired earlier in the season? Who knows?
Yeah, it's one of those you could debate, but it's just as I say, we kind of talked about it on the podcast a few weeks ago and compared first half of the season prior to the winter break and after it in terms of the goals conceded, and I'm sure if I was to go and revisit those stats again now, it would be even more alarming, the number of goals we've conceded on average per game. So it is something to kind of debate and talk about, but we'll quickly move on from that Aberdeen game, because you can't really look at any positives from it, to be honest, other than we went 1-0 up, and then that was probably the highlight for a few minutes. But we did finish our Premiership campaign at home to Hibs. Not a great deal to talk about in this game, very typical end of season affair. However, points probably fair in the end, isn't it? And good to probably go out. We've not lost in our last 4 at home as well this season.
Yeah, I guess I think coming into this game, it was more about the kind of send off for some of the kind of players. So yeah, you're hoping for something that wasn't going to be embarrassing, I guess. Considering the last time we played Hibs and stuff like that, it probably wasn't one that people were massively hopeful for. I guess their own troubles has maybe played into it and given a little bit more optimism. But yeah, I think it was even enough kind of game. I think that they might be a little bit concerned by that. I've seen a lot of Hibs fans talking about, oh, David Gray, should he get the job and stuff like that. I think I've seen that there was a genuine tweet that said if David Gray beats Livingston, then he should be in serious contention. And I'm like, if you've seen us this season, why are you thinking that that's a good thing to put in his locker there? So surely by the fact that he didn't beat us, he shouldn't be in contention because that's embarrassing for him. Yeah, I think it was more so just for, we all know about the players are kind of moving on and stuff like that. Like your Bruce Andersons. I think it was more about making sure that they kind of got the right send off because, there's a lot of players who are in that squad who deserve, the best kind of going forward and will be remembered very fondly at Livingston despite what's kind of transpired this season. But as you say, yeah, quite an even game. I think actually the first, half an hour, it seems as if we were the team who were more dominant. At the same time, though, we're creating a good couple of chances. I think there was still a couple of threats from Hibs where they, missed chances coming from the edge of the box. The goal that they end up scoring by Melita is, it's not a great one either, where the ball falls in the box and it seems as if there's 3 players around them. He somehow manages to latch at it and it hits off of Nottingham and it goes in. And you're looking at that kind of tight area and thinking, is somebody not able to get their foot and clear that away before he can, bring it under control and whatnot. After that, though, I think that, kind of just very much like an even game. I don't think that either team necessarily did enough to, to merit kind of taking the 3 points. But, we did end up getting back into it. Some actual nice, patient build-up play and, a good cross by Newbley finds Anderson, who's able to, slot home in his last game and take him to double figures for the season as well. Incredible that we've had, as we just kind of mentioned there, regarding, goals and, defensive kind of issues. We've got a striker there who's on 10 goals this season, who'd been shunned out most of the time. I think that's something that everybody's going to kind of be looking at, and that's where a lot of the discontent regarding management and decisions are coming from when you're seeing things kind of go like that. But yeah, and he also got a goal disallowed with a very, very well taken finish as well, just ruled out just narrowly for offside. But yeah, not much more to talk about from it. Kind of a weird atmosphere to be honest, where it's I think that the guys in the C3 were very much up for it, but it was still very much just kind of a very team game, wasn't it? And then the final whistle goes and everybody's just sort of we've been relegated, but you're wanting to make sure that players are getting a good send off, and just quite a strange kind of afternoon.
Yeah, it's that way where, because relegation was confirmed a few weeks ago, or as a fan, you've almost been resigned to it for half the season at least. It is a kind of weird atmosphere at that game at the weekend, and yeah, to kind of just take the game on its own, yeah, it was a very competitive, closely fought game. There wasn't an awful lot between the two sides. Probably the best chance of the first half falls to Michael Nottingham, a header at the back post from a corner. Walcott's made a really good save down to his right hand side from that. Couple of pot shots from Triantis, and Josh Campbell narrowly went wide for Hibs, but they didn't create anything of great note. Had a lot of possession, but nothing of kind of real note to report on that. And you kind of talk about that opening goal from Hibs. Melida, who's been a very good signing for them in the January window. It'd be interesting to see with Hibs' new money backing that they've got, whether he could be a permanent acquisition in the summer for them. But it's poor defending from ourselves again. You've got Stephen Kelly, Pittman and Yengi all on the edge of the box. The ball kind of pinball a little bit on the edge of the box, does break to Melida, and it does take a pretty wicked deflection off Michael Nottingham in the end and finds itself in the far corner. But yeah, other than that, it was really just the equaliser from Bruce Anderson in the game. Again, Hibs had a lot of the ball at times, but weren't really creating a great deal. You could put that down to the fact that we actually defended our box fairly well for large proportions of the game. But as you say, it was patient build-up in the final third from ourselves. Good ball to the back post by Newbley. Nottingham kind of there was a bit of contention whether there was a foul in the build-up as well from Michael Nottingham, or in terms of in the box, but the goal was given, and it's a very good finish by Bruce Anderson, and it's very composed as well, because he's maybe expecting Nottingham to get his head on that. It's then just dropped, and it's a very good first touch, and then he's very calm and composed to roll it into the far corner on his left foot. And it's a great way for Bruce to kind of sign off at Livingston, doing what he does best, which is scoring goals. And I'm sure he'll do that wherever he ends up next. And as you say, after that, it was a case of just trying to almost thank players for their service at the football club. It's a shame that guys like Jason Holt, guys like James Penrice didn't get the opportunity to be on the park and get the send-off that they deserve. Penners has been excellent in 2 spells at the football club. Jason Holt, we'll probably come on to talk about our favourite kind of players over this 6-year period, and I think Holt absolutely is one of those, in my opinion, who would make our best team over the last kind of 6 years. And it's a shame that he couldn't come on. That was obviously confirmed that he'll be away. He's activated a release clause, but yeah, we did get the opportunity to give the likes of Bruce Anderson, Andrew Shinnie, who I think is one of the rare players this season who comes out with pass marks. But as you say, the fact that Bruce Anderson's got 10 goals this season, what is that, 30 goals in 3 seasons at Livingston in total, it just makes you wonder, when he scored 10 goals from the kind of limited starts, minutes on the park this season, could he have almost single-handedly kept us up had he been given the game time that he should have been for larger proportions of the campaign? It's one of those what-ifs, isn't it? But at the end of the day, that's the season drawn to a close. We'll kind of come on and talk a little bit about the squad retention list that was released, I think, on Monday. And there's been a few ones that were fully expected, but there's been a few that have raised a couple of eyebrows on the list, more so the available for transfer kind of column. So players that are out of contract and moving on: Bruce Anderson, Morgan Boyce, Curtis Guthrie, Jack Hamilton, Joel Newbley, Io Obalai, James Penrice, and Andrew Shinnie. Obviously, wish all of them the best of luck. By the way, just a little shout out to Joel. I know you didn't appreciate my tweet that I put out during the week. I maybe used a bit strong language saying woeful, but I'll actually give you a compliment. I thought you were a lot better against Hibs at the weekend there. So, and Joel, you have given us some very good moments over the course of your time at Livingston, so try and not take it too personally. But apologies if I caused any offence. Activating a release clause: Michael Devlin, Jason Holt. Under contract but available for transfer: Stephen Bradley, David Carson, Mo Sangare, Miles Welsh-Hayes. Players that are in discussions over a new deal: we spoke about Sean Kelly previously. Not a great surprise at that one. Christian Montano as well, which probably has come as a little bit of a surprise. And then obviously we've got our new signings who we've discussed in detail, and players that have been retained. What are the ones that kind of stick out for you there, Angus?
I think first of all would be in the contract expiring. I think a lot of us were maybe hoping to see Jack Hamilton maybe stick around and maybe be a goalkeeper next season, because although that thing says that Shamal George is under contract and that, I feel as if he'll be somebody who'll attract suitors and stuff like that, and we may end up still be departing with him. So I think that with the way that they've kind of like put this down, I was surprised to see that as well. But unfortunately for Hamilton, to see him kind of moving on, I thought that he was somebody who could maybe be like a goalkeeper in the Championship. But fair enough, if there's a better offer elsewhere, or if he's able to get a club in the Premiership. I think going to that one where it's the transfer list though is the quite surprising one, and for multiple reasons. Mo Sangare is probably a good example of where our budget's been wildly mismanaged, not being good for us, and already a season in, try to punt him away. In all honesty, I remember watching up at Brecon in the first game of the season in the cup and being like, he's not doing anything, he doesn't look anything that's going to be a valuable asset to us, and being concerned from that point on. Unfortunately, he's not been able to kick on from there. David Carson, brought in January, player experience in the Championship and stuff like that. You'd have thought that signing him would have been with one eye towards the future and maybe going down a player who could maybe be a valuable asset. for him to be kind of moved on straight away. You know, we've seen in recent weeks that he's kind of been bombed out of the side as well. What's happened there? Is there something that we need to be concerned about? Stephen Bradley, yeah, as well. Like, he's asked to be let go as well. Is there an issue within the club that, you know, for like him and Carson, that's kind of ensued? And then one for me as well, Miles Welch-Hayes. You know, we sign a guy, you know, we've seen this quite a few times where we sign somebody and instantly loan them out to get them some experience in the Scottish game. Miles Welch-Hayes has done that, played well for Dunfermline, but suddenly we're sending him off. And again, it's like, what's going on with the budget and stuff like that? Then, if that was the plan, why is it being moved on straight away? And I think that asks quite a lot of questions regarding, you know, how have these players been managed and stuff like that, in terms of why are they discontent? Why, like, where are they looking to go to now and stuff like that? It's, yeah, I think that those ones particularly are a bit puzzling for me.
Yeah, to kind of go through it in the order that the list was kind of done. So the players that are out of contract, not surprised by the likes of Morgan Boys. Obviously, he's been on loan up at Inverness course of this season. Curtis Guthrie, for me, is just a signing that's not worked out. Jack Hamilton would probably be the surprise that he's not on that list where we're trying to keep a hold of him, or there's an offer on the table to keep him. And then you're looking at the likes of Bruce, Joel, Io, and Andrew Shinnie, all players who I think have been fantastic for the football club, by and large been fantastic for the football club. And, you know, I wish all of them the best of luck in wherever they end up next. All of them have at some point given us some really fond memories. Bruce, 30 goals, as I say, over his time at the football club. Joel, that first 12 months when he came back from his stint at Arbroath, was borderline unplayable at times, and he was certainly a sort of player that got you off your seat. And I genuinely hope Joel finds that sort of form again wherever he ends up next, because he is an entertaining player on his day. Io's been a pretty steady centre half. I do think he struggled a little bit more this year, coming off the back of that knee injury, I believe it was, at the tail end of last year. James Penrice, again, I can't speak highly enough of Penners. He's absolutely full of heart and one of those players you could never question on effort and genuinely play for the jersey. And then Andrew Shinnie, he's given us a couple of wonderful moments, in particular that winner against Celtic when he played as the false nine in that game. Unbelievable finish past Joe Hart. The players on the automatic release clause being activated, obviously disappointed. Jason Holt, I think he would have been an absolute standout in the Championship, and he'd be part of what you'd build your team around for next year. But, you know, understandably, he's got a young family. He's probably one of our higher earners. But again, Jason Holt's a player I wish the best of luck to wherever he ends up next. And I think he's more than capable of playing for a number of clubs in the Scottish Premiership. So I do wish Holty the best of luck. Michael Devlin, he was one we spoke about at the start of the season as, on paper, if you can get him fit and on the park, he could be a very good signing for us. If I'm being very honest, I think the last 3 or 4 years, with the injuries that he's had, has probably caught up with him a little bit, in my opinion, playing at that level. And I have to say, when he first came in, the first kind of 10 or so games of the season, prior to that draw up at Ross County where he did come off injured, I thought he was excellent for us. But I do think his form really drastically dropped off when he came back into the side, maybe 4 or 5 weeks after that. I think it was the game at Rugby Park in particular. And from then on in, his form's kind of dipped a lot. So it's one that's just not worked out in that case for us. As you say, the players under contract, Stephen Bradley, I believe he had looked to explore a move at the start of the season to Falkirk, was something that I'd heard and didn't materialise. I'm not overly surprised. I think he would be a good player in the Championship, who I would have kept the hold of. But if he wants to explore a move, that's entirely up to him. And I think he's been unlucky this year with some of the injuries and niggles that he's had over the course of the season. And I think at times he's been used as a little bit of a scapegoat. Because he is a younger player, it's probably easier to go and sub him off than it is to go and sub off an experienced pro. David Carson's probably the baffling one, but reading in between the lines, he's not featured a great deal since, I think, the game up at McDermott Park. That was back at the end end of February, very start of March. And given we've had a very sparse-looking bench most weeks, he's still featured on the bench most games and has still not been on. As I say, I find that one quite baffling, given he's got 120-odd games in the Championship. He's experienced at that level, knows the league. You'd think he's someone that we would want to keep about, but I think reading between the lines, there's a bit more to that one than meets the eye. Sangare, agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that's just not worked out. Miles Welsh, I don't know how much it was getting him loaned out when he first came in. I think he again struggled with injuries. Went on loan to Dunfermline, and from certainly the feedback I've heard from Dunfermline fans, had done okay there. But then you need to look at the fact he's a right back. We've got Jamie Brandon, we've got Donnellan, we've got the boy Finlayson that's come in from Linfield, and then you'd have Welsh. You've got 4 potential options at right back. Is he going to start ahead of any of those 3 in that position? I wouldn't have said so. But again, it just kind of begs the question, why was this player given a 3-year contract in the first place? And he's lasted essentially 6 months at the football club before he's been shown the door. Out of contract players that are in discussion, Sean Kelly, I know you've got different opinion to me, but I think he can play a number of positions and he's fairly steady. Would I be fussed if Sean Kelly moved on? Probably not. But would I be particularly fussed if he stayed? Probably not either. Montano on his day is excellent. The problem with Montano this year, and probably his first season at the football club as well, has been getting him on the park and playing regularly. Can you take that risk by giving him a 1 or a 2-year deal and only get maybe 10, 15 games out of him? That's where you kind of need to look at that. Players under contract, I'm absolutely delighted to see the likes of Shamal George, Stephen Kelly still on that list. Tete Yenge as well is another one that springs to mind. Will they have interest in them? I think they probably would. And if there was offers to come in, I also don't think we're going to stand in the way and stop these players from moving on. But I tell you what, if we can keep a hold of the likes of Stephen Kelly and Yenge, I think they would be absolute standouts in the Championship. And I think Yenge will get us goals at that level. And I think Stephen Kelly will, what we failed to do at the start of this season is build the team around him. But so far we've got the basis of a decent, in my opinion, a decent side on paper in the Championship.
I think that last bit, saying about building the team around the right players, that'll be the interesting thing to see what happens in that regard, because we absolutely did not do that this season, and that is ultimately what's cost us. We came off the back of last season with, Stephen Kelly being our best player, shunned at the side for the first half for the most part. Bruce Anderson the same. Guess we've just got to have hope that, in the Championship that the recruitment and the game plan's going to be a lot better, because, it's all good talking about players' futures, people coming in and stuff like that. But, if it's not being set up in the right way, like it's not been this season, then it's ultimately going to be pointless. But yeah, I guess like one of the exciting things about the summer transfer window is, you do see a lot of people coming in despite, a whole bunch of people moving on. So yeah, hopefully there'll be, quite a few exciting signings for us to look forward to seeing in action. And, probably, it's only the best part of like 2 months before we'll be back for like friendlies or even for the Betfred Cup and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll keep a close eye and see what happens.
Probably one last player we should pick up on that is on the under contract list is Michael Nottingham. Now, Michael Nottingham, from my understanding when it was announced, was a 1-year deal. There seems to have been no chat or announcement around an extension other than essentially from this announcement where he's under contract for next year. And he's certainly a player that amongst the fan base has come in for a lot of criticism, despite what I believe, off the park, he's one of the nicest guys you could meet. But what's your kind of take on that one? For me, that was one that we probably should have, if we had the opportunity to, said thanks very much and kind of shake hands and move on from it.
Yeah, I agree. Being part of, the worst Livingston defence in God knows how long, not being, he's been playing at right back and stuff like that as well, which is, clearly not a natural position for him. There's not really anything I've seen there to be, massively excited about. Yeah, as you say, like how's the contract being activated? It must be I wonder if it's like an appearance based kind of thing or something like that. And, if we've had like no players, or we've been forced to play it. But I guess that's maybe a concern that, if next season they're genuinely looking at him as being one of our first choice defenders, yeah, I wouldn't be too impressed, to be honest with you, because there's nothing there that showcased that merits, holding that kind of position within the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I would kind of agree with that personally, but obviously, as you mentioned, I reckon it's got to be something to do with appearances that he's made, and if there was, I don't know, a gentleman's agreement between Michael Nottingham and the manager in terms of offering an extension off the back of that, I don't know. But yeah, as you say, we've got the basis of a decent side going into the Championship. As you say, I fully expect there to be a little bit more movement with players going out the door and coming in the door as well. But it'll give you a little bit more of a freshness, and I think that helps fans a little bit when you've had a season like this, just seeing a few fresh faces to try and get yourself excited about and just have a complete reset in terms of your view on the team a little bit, and hopefully it allows us to get a bright start in the Championship next year. The Lionesses knew only a win would do against champions Queen's Park, and Kilmarnock dropping points as well if they were to reach the playoffs. Despite going 2-0 up against Queen's Park, the ladies would eventually lose 3-2 and finish the season, their debut season, in SWPL2 third in the table. Angus, probably the way it's materialised on the final day will be what's disappointing, but if you offered the girls third place at the start of the season, the management team as well, I'm sure they would have bit your hand off for that, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, at the start of the season, coming up into the division, you're not too sure what's kind of going to transpire and stuff like that. So I think first of all, it's like, about ensuring like safety, and then like you just kind of see for like that kind of first round of fixtures where you're going to kind of end up. And yeah, it did seem as if we were just going to be kind of like floating around, that kind of mid-table kind of area. And the fact that for so long throughout the season, it was like ourselves and Boroughmuir fighting for third and fourth place, even St Johnstone as well. Those kind of three teams being somewhat close to each other in those three positions, with Kilmarnock and Queen's Park a little bit ahead. To then kind of finish the season, ahead of Boroughmuir, and you're pushing it on to Kilmarnock and you're a bit closer to them instead, is a very, very good achievement from us, I would say. As you say, kind of like a tumultuous season with some plenty of changes throughout as well. Yeah, I don't think that they would have expected to have been in this area at this time of the season. Yeah, going into the game though, as you say, it's the way that's kind of transpired, because it's by far the best that we've also played against Queen's Park. We very much took it to them, put a lot of pressure on them, getting high at the park and creating a whole bunch of chances. We're particularly causing a lot of issues down our right-hand side. Sharon Hughes-Lee was playing like a player possessed, cutting in on our left foot, a good couple of times, and getting good balls into the box and having a good couple of efforts herself. And it was good to see that our pressure ended up being rewarded. We won a penalty. Natasha Frew stepped up to take it. Penalty, maybe not the best, but the ball falls back there, and she made absolutely no mistake in rifling it in off the crossbar to make sure it went in. I don't think she could have hit it much harder. I don't know if there was frustrations from the initial penalty miss from that, but yeah, from there as well, we continue doing the right things. Down the right hand side again, Sharon Hughes-Lee puts a good cross in, and Ashley Elizabeth finishes very well to give us a 2-0 lead. And yeah, from that point on, you're looking at it and being like, oh, there very well could be a chance here. But Queen's Park very much showed why, they are champions. They're very resilient. They're a very fit team. They're very technical on the ball. The ball falls to Lassie on the edge of the box, and Callahan, she fires it off the post, and it makes it 2-1. And it's probably the second goal that probably seals the game, in all honesty, Euan. Right, like literally the last kick of the ball before half time, we have a corner and suddenly they break. We maybe could have been a wee bit more streetwise in that regard, and we could have just brought the player down for a foul, take the yellow card, and you go into the break still 2-1 up, and Queen's Park have got to do something a little bit different. Unfortunately, they end up breaking through. I think it's Lassie Robertson who's able to fire beyond Molly, makes it 2 each. And I think that the timing of that goal, you can see the goal and then the whistle goes straight away for half time. You can just tell like the kind of sucker punch that is, and how much it drained out of the Lassies. And I think you could see that in the second half that we're a bit drained from it. Queen's Park definitely put a bit more of the pressure on, and probably were a team who were more in the ascendancy, although that we were still able to get up the park in that. But I think that as that kind of go on, and as we would have become a bit more ambitious and desperate to kind of get that goal back, to kind of put our fate into our own hands, it would leave more gaps, and it was another counter attack late on that ended up falling to the lassie for Queen's Park to finish and make it 3-2. So the way it kind of transpired will be one that, you know, we might be, you know, disappointed with, but I think that the effort there on Sunday was absolutely tremendous from the team, and it's probably one of the better performances it might actually be the best performance they have had against either Queen's Park or Kilmarnock this season. They definitely caused a whole bunch of problems in that. Perhaps maybe with a bit more options on the bench, you know, we only had Raywin as well as, you know, three of the reserve players to come on. You know, that it was a very hot day and stuff like that as well. The Lassies have been playing, you know, plenty of football in recent weeks as well. Maybe if we had a couple more options, you know, a couple more threats that we could have brought on to, you know, to try and win the game for us. You know, the likes of, we're missing the likes of Beth and Lucy as well, even though those kind of players down like on the wings and stuff like that. But, you know, like, I think that although it was a step too far, I don't think it's anything that we should be, you know, ashamed of or anything like that. I think that the way that the season's gone and stuff, we'll be very, very proud of the, you know, the team's efforts. And yeah, it just wasn't meant to be this season, but plenty of positive signs for the next one, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. As you kind of mentioned, going 2-0 up in the game, Kilmarnock drew their game, which would have been a perfect result if the girls were able to see off Queen's Park, but we've kind of touched on Queen's Park on numerous occasions over the course of the season. They've been by far and away the best side in the league and have ran away with the league, and they'll go up as champions, deservedly so. But as you say, that the timing of goals can make such a big difference in games, not just obviously in context of the scoreline, but psychologically, and conceding that goal literally on the stroke of the referee's whistle is an absolute sucker punch going in. It changes your team talk entirely going into that second half. But if you were to pinpoint an area of the season that's maybe, because naturally you get to the end of the season and you reflect on what could have been in these sort of situations, for me it's probably that little dip in form after we beat Kilmarnock at home just after the winter break. That little dip in form, run of kind of maybe 4 or 5 games where we didn't pick up, maybe picked up the odd point here or there, but for me that's where it probably stems to a little bit.
Yeah, you could say so. It's only natural at this point in the season to kind of look back and think of those kind of things there. As you say, you know, missing out by 2 points in the end. If you have a little bit more of a streamlined run through the season, not where, you know, you've dropped points to likes of Gartcairn at home during that run. You're maybe looking at results like that where they've caught us at like a bad time. Yeah, Glasgow women away, drawing 0-0 there. You know, if you get like a victory there, which we probably could have been capable of, you know, you could very much have landed into that situation. Fail to beat Boroughmuir on any of those occasions. You know, if you change one of those ones to get an extra 2 points, you'd go level with Kilmarnock. You'd obviously need to do something else again. But yeah, 2 losses to St Johnstone, I guess. And yeah, there is like a little bit of a spell where, and that's ultimately what kind of possibly led to, you know, a change in the management side as well, to be fair. But I think going into the playoffs, it might have been a bit of an ask, you know, for your first season there. And then, you know, if you did manage to get promoted, it would be a tumultuous task. So it might be one of those ones, though, Euan, where, you know, another season in the league will do us the benefit, will do us the world of a good. Still got like a new coaching staff coming in to kind of implement their ideas and stuff like that in pre-season. So yeah, I think there's things to be confident about, and we can look at, you know, hopefully another promotion charge next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think we saw that little bit of a gap when they played Spartans, probably in the Scottish Cup, obviously an established SWPL 1 side, and they were put to the sword that day by Spartans. So, and you saw what Glasgow women, who were in SWPL 1 last year, and you look at them finishing near the bottom of the table this year in SWPL 2. So I think that kind of highlights that it is quite a drastic and big jump between the two divisions. So you're right in what you're saying. It's maybe no bad thing that they've missed out this year, but I think one of the things we spoke about at the start of the season was the squad was a little bit bloated in terms of numbers. As the season's gone on, that's almost naturally dwindled down a little bit. And I think as a result, you've started to maybe see what a clearer idea of what a best 11 is. If you can keep that group of players together, add another bit of quality to add a little bit of depth in terms on the bench, because as you say, they've been short on numbers in that regard in the last few weeks. If you can add, say, 3 or 4 really good quality additions for next year, they're in a right good place to go and challenge again, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you look at it where you've got, goalkeeping situation, Molly and Shania, very good. The back three, tremendous. Like my 3 players of the season, I guess I would say very, very consistent throughout. Bryony Ross, Jess Murphy, and Natasha Frew. Yeah, I think you're looking at that back three and you're perfectly content. On the wings and stuff like that, Sharon Hughes came into a good bit of form. I think she got 5 assists in like the last 6 games or something like that. It really came into her own at the end there. Midfield, there's exciting players in there. Anna Dickoff, Hannah Davey, both young players who, if you can keep a hold of them, they, with more game time, they were doing really well. They've got like Shannon Mulligan there, plenty of other options up front as well, with likes of, Ashley Elizabeth, Lauren Evans as well. Raywin, Jen, players who, are very good at this level as well, and add a lot to the team. And I think like with kind of like players like that, the thing for next season needs to be a bit more fairness, I guess, is what I would like to say for the team. It's all good having like a big squad in that, but things have got to merit performances and stuff like that. I think that's ultimately in the end which has caused a mass culling to the team. Players who have been playing well not being rewarded for doing so. I think there's a lot of people who have tried to be patient there, and it's ultimately kind of like led to them leaving the club and stuff like that. So hopefully next season we can see a bit better man management side, I think, is maybe the thing they'll probably be looking at throughout the season. But yeah, hopefully, there'll be more new additions to the team as well, and hopefully ones that will be welcome and can take us to that next level.
It's probably no bad thing as well that Paul Gregg's had a few games at the end of this season, competitive games, where he's been able to see the players that he's got available, and hopefully he'll look to keep a hold of for next year. But it allows them to maybe see where they need a little bit more depth. They maybe need another option or two. So I think that's no bad thing that he's come in at the tail end of the season where they still had stuff to play for in terms of going for promotion, and he can get a right good idea of the squad for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's always kind of like a good thing where, he's been able to kind of assess the situation, and, at the same time might have like his own ideas. He may have had to have played the 3-5-2 and stuff like that just now because of the personnel that was only available to him. There may be ideas to maybe revert to something in the future, and that, who knows. But yeah, the preparation, I'm sure, for next season's probably already begun. You probably have a couple of people in mind who you might be looking to bring in, which hopefully will be finding out pretty soon. But yeah, plenty to be encouraged by, I would say, in this kind of the new developments within the team.
Just to finish off, obviously a massive congratulations to the girls for what's been on the whole a wonderful debut season at SWPL2, and hopefully that sets them in really good stead for another promotion charge next season. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. And all of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
With the season now finished, and this being our final episode, we'd normally finish talking end of season awards. However, this season isn't one for that. And we thought we'd get a little bit nostalgic and reflect on our last 6 years covering the podcast and our favourite moments in that time. Now, we first started the podcast, myself and Andrew Semple, and one of the segments we did was the greatest Livingston 11 and the Dud 11. So we're going to revisit that. However, there's a little bit more specific to it. It's just covering the last 6 years and our little adventure in the Scottish Premiership. So we'll go with our best 11 first, Angus. Who would make your best Livy team over the last 6 years?
I just want me to go through the entire team.
Well, why don't we go positional first? So
Okay.
I'll let you go goalkeeper, I'll give you mine, and then we can go on to the defence and talk through it that way.
I actually think that this is maybe the hardest one, was because I think there's a lot of good options here. And I don't think there's an awful lot that separates them. And I think in the end, I was like, what goalkeeper gave me the most kind of moments? So I think that this is maybe going to be like a controversial one, and maybe in your eyes, but I've went for Max Stryjek here.
Oh, right, okay.
And it is because I look back over this time in the Premiership, and I will hold my hands up and say that there were the moments where goals were conceded by Max that probably shouldn't have been as well. But I'm looking at what goalkeeper gave the most moments positively in the league as well. You're looking at draw at Celtic Park, win over Celtic, how well they've been played. That first game he played against Rangers. Giving him the nod due to those kind of moments. But that's not taken away from any of the other candidates, so I'm sure you've maybe got one of them instead.
Yeah, and in Max's defence, see the way you've spoke about it there, if I was to think of our goalkeepers and think about the one that's produced saves that I can visually see in my head, like the save from Barisic's free kick, that was one of the rare COVID games I was allowed into as essentially allowed to help because they had a few extra people on site because it was live on television. So I saw that one in the flesh. The penalty save at Celtic Park, the penalty save up at Ross County in the Tom Parks game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I probably agree with you to an extent in that regard that visually I can see more highlights from Max and I can see saves that he's made. However, I will never be able to get out some of the blunders that he's made from my head as well, which almost cancels them out at the same time. Which is why I've gone for Steady Eddie Liam Kelly in goals for myself in our debut season. I think with Liam in particular, we had him on the podcast. He's a really good guy off the park, one of football's good guys, and I think he came in for a little bit of stick, and there was maybe a little bit of scepticism when we re-signed Liam Kelly from the season in League One, where he did make a few mistakes, almost completely isolated to games against East Fife in that League One season. But he came in replacing Neil Alexander, who is a club legend from his 2 stints at the football club, and obviously that playoff winning side, Neil Alexander played a massive part in that. So I think he was under a lot of pressure when he came in, and he was excellent, and then got his big move to QPR off the back of that. And also, bear in mind, he also got called up for Scotland in that time whilst being at the football club. And I happened to be over in San Marino for one of those games where he was called upon. So, yeah, he maybe doesn't have as big a highlight reel in terms of big moments, but for me, Liam Kelly would have been my number one if I was to pick a team from the last 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And in all honesty, I think that if you chose anybody between Stryjek, Kelly, Sarkic, yeah, I think that those are the kind of like decent enough options that you would be kind of content with, in all honesty. Yeah, I don't think that there's an awful lot that separates them. I think it is just, what kind of stands out more for you. I think I've just went for the highlight reel, essentially. But yeah, moving on to defence. I guess this is the interesting one. Have you gone back 3 or back 4 or back 5?
I've gone back 4. I've gone 4-3-3.
I basically the same. Cool. So that works perfectly. We've not even talked about this, so that's ideal. Guess we'll start off right back, number 2 on the team sheet. I think this is going to be quite a straightforward one for both of us, isn't it?
No brainer, he's Talk Livi's man. He's better than Cafu. It's Nicky Devlin. There's absolute no-brainer on the right back front. It's Nicky all the way. And obviously we got to know him fairly well doing the podcast and sponsoring him for 3 years, captain for 2 years, part of back-to-back top six finishes, reached the League Cup final. Player that absolutely wore his heart on his sleeve. He's the type of player that fans love. And yeah, what a brilliant servant. Close to 150 games in the top flight for the football club as well. Yeah, and I would go as far as to say he's probably one of the best fullbacks the club's ever had. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer, Nicky Devlin.
Yeah, can only echo that. Like absolutely on the team sheet. Brilliant for us, brilliant to us personally as well. Yeah, can't disagree with anything you said there, and very worthy of being the right back in this team. Yeah, very easy one to decide upon. Going on to left back, Euan, is this one a bit more of a couple options or straightforward as well?
I've gone James Penrice, and kind of similar to Nicky Devlin in the regard that he's one of those players that fans love because he wears his heart on his sleeve. Local lad. Again, there was maybe a little bit of scepticism when he came back because he'd been at Partick Thistle in League One and was making that jump up to the Premiership for the first time. And I do think he had a little bit of an adjustment period when he first came in. But I think halfway through that season onwards, I think Penners was absolutely wonderful for us. And again, this year, very difficult season. And it's a shame that, again, Penners didn't get that proper send-off that he probably deserved at the weekend there against Hibs because he's been out injured. But he's one of the rare players that comes out with pass marks from this season, and his form has managed to get him a really good move to Hearts, and absolutely wish the best of luck to Penners at Hearts. I think it's a really good move from him, and I think Hearts fans will come to love him just as much as Livy fans did.
I've also got Penrice, so this is now just going to start going the way where we're basically just going to be echoing each other. But yeah, moves on with our best wishes, and as a player from like the area, and that he's done very well for us. 2 stints at the club as well. Somebody who will be remembered very fondly over his time at Allenvale.
Now let's go on to the centre halves. We'll go for both of them at the same time. Who have you gone for as your centre half pairing? I've gone for balance as well.
So mine's is John Guthrie and Craig Halkett is the centre back partnership I have gone with. Guthrie was, I think, following the season where we lost, Gallagher and Halkett, and then Lithgow was kind of suffering through injury and illness. We were like, oh no, what are we going to do? Who's going to come in to try and replace that? And we could not have asked for a better replacement than John Guthrie, who was absolutely tremendous in his time at the club. Chips in with goals as well, solid at the back, no nonsense. Yeah, very good player to have. And, as somebody who joined the club with people, maybe from his other teams, like saying that good luck to us, certainly proved them wrong. And I think that since he's went back down south as well, he's been hitting it. He's been on great form as well. Next to him, Craig Halkett, absolute no-brainer, player of the season in that first year that we came back up, absolutely tremendous. And unfortunately, injuries has maybe plagued him a little bit more. If not, you probably would have maybe seen him play for Scotland a couple of more times. But yeah, absolutely tremendous player. And, what he did for the club is absolutely tremendous. And, only played that one season in the Premiership for us, but was absolutely brilliant for us.
Another goal-scoring centre half.
Yeah,
he was joint top goal scorer for 2 seasons on the bounce, wasn't he? Unbelievable. But yeah, I've got the exact same centre half pairing as you. Exact same centre half pairing. Again, I had I didn't have Craig Halkett. It was Bruni that done that interview with Halks, but I did speak to John Guthrie, and that was quite an entertaining interview because he had an interesting back and forth with Marvin Bartley over his time at Livy, and Marvin decided to come in and start interviewing John himself whilst me and Bruni were in talking to Guthers. But Big Bad John, he seemed to get nicknamed with. He couldn't have been the polar opposite. He was like the friendliest giant you could meet. And as you say, again, came in with a little bit of scepticism because of his spell at Walsall, where a lot of fans didn't have probably the opposite from what they said about Nicky Devlin. They were like, oh, you'll love Nicky when he comes up. Both of them came in at the same time. John Guthrie came in with less positive feedback, and he certainly proved a lot of doubters wrong, chipped in with a few important goals over his time, and he's moved down south to Northampton, and he's been excellent for them down there. Craig Halkett, again, a player, probably I would go as far as to say one of the best centre halves we've ever had in terms of what he helped the football club achieve. Brilliant captain as well. And yeah, just a really nice guy as well off the park. And I agree with you, had it not been for injuries at Hearts, I think he might have managed to make a couple of appearances for Scotland. I was over in Vienna when he did get called up for a squad. He didn't get on the park though. I was really hoping he would get a cap when we were over there, but he's still got a little bit of time left in his career where hopefully he can get over these kind of injuries that have plagued him maybe the last 18 months and he can get back to doing what he does best. But yeah, identical back fours. Let's move on to the middle of the park.
I feel like this is going to be quite a similar one as well, to be honest with you, Euan.
I reckon there's two that'll match. I reckon there's one that won't.
Okay, so sitting, I've basically got a sitting kind of pairing of Jason Holt and Marvin Bartley.
Okay. I'm going to give you my midfield. You're talking maybe like a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
I'm going to be slightly different. So I've got Jason Holt and I've got Craig Sibbald.
Ooh. Oh, so Bartley's on the left wing, is he?
Yeah, Bartley's where he belongs on the left wing. No, I've got Jason Holt and Craig Sibbald. I would have as my
Okay.
sitting pair.
Interesting.
Jason Holt, he came in very start of the COVID season, and again he made his debut in that game against Rangers we kind of spoke about, where Striek made that unbelievable save from Barisic, and Holtley hadn't played for the best part of 4 or 5 months due to COVID and the season being cut short. And you would have thought that he'd been playing 90 minutes for the previous 3 or 4 months. He came in, played the full game, didn't look out of place, and the first thought was that is a Livingston player right there. And he's been a wonderful servant at his time at the football club over the last 4 years. In particular, probably his second season at the club, where he got Players Player of the Year. I would have rioted at that Player of the Year award had Holty not won something, because he was nailed on for an award of some sort. I thought he was outstanding in his second season at the football club. And again, I think just a proper top professional. And again, a player that I wish the best of luck with moving on. I picked Craig Sibbald. He's maybe one that I think Sibs suffered at Livy a little bit from the fact that he can just about do a job anywhere across the middle of the park, and maybe didn't get a right run of games in one position. He came in from Falkirk, I think was probably a bit of a coup for the club, bringing him in from Falkirk when we got promoted. There was probably, I would say, had better offers on the table than ourselves, but we did manage to bring him in. He kind of suffered in his first season. I think he had an injury. It was maybe if I remember correctly, a hernia operation that he had just as he came in. And it was probably Robbie Crawford getting injured in our second season up, part of the way through the season, and Sibs then came in and started playing alongside Marvin Bartley. And probably for the best part of 18 months, take out Lyndon Dykes and Nicky Devlin, most consistent player for me. And that COVID season, and he was a massive part of that unbeaten run. Later on in that season, started playing off the right-hand side, and I think he brought out the best of Nicky Devlin for spells that season as well. His final season at the football club, I think, he's been, again, very unfortunate with the injuries, and probably it was more health issues due to COVID that he suffered a couple of times, and he had a kind of nasty injury up at Dens Park, which saw him out for a spell. But yeah, I think Sibs is a terrific footballer, and I noticed that he'd swept up a few of the awards at Dundee United's Player of the Year, and he'll be back playing Premiership football where I think he should be playing. Yeah, I think Sibs is a top player, really classy footballer as well. That's why Bartley was probably, I was humming and hawing about between him and Bartley, but I think Sibs just maybe longevity beat him over Bartley. Bartley had kind of 2 seasons, whilst Sibs had maybe 3.5, where he was a regular in the side.
I think so. Aye, for me, for Bartley, I think it's that leadership that he brought to the team, that perfect kind of player at the base of your midfield who's going to break up play and going to allow the players who are probably the first to admit it, better with the ball to go and do what they can do best. Yeah, I think him and Holt in the middle of the park, plenty of energy, plenty of tenacity, and yeah, we'll feed the ball off very nicely to players around the park and stuff like that as well. And yeah, captain led us to a cup final and stuff like that as well. Very integral part of that team would then become part of the coaching staff. And yeah, with Jason Holt, can only echo what you said there. Absolutely tremendous over his time. Probably even got a good argument of being the best Livingston player over these 6 years in the Premiership in terms of consistency. Absolute great servant, and yeah, somebody who goes with the best wishes for us. But I guess we'll go for, so it'll be my three, I guess.
Yeah, we'll go on to three and behind, just to kind of touch on Bartley as well. Probably one of the best guests we've had on the podcast as well. You were in for that interview, and he was absolute gold for an hour that he was on the Zoom call with ourselves. Some brilliant stories and just a great character in general.
Yeah, definitely so. Aye. Moving on to the three in behind, the striker. I have got on the right hand side, from right to left, I have Stephen Lawless, I have Scott Pittman, and then of course Alan Forrest on the left wing.
We've got one difference, and I hummed and hawed, and mine's probably going to be controversial. I've got Alan Forrest on the left hand side. I've got Scott Pittman as my 10. I mean, how could you not have Pitts in your team over the last 6 years? Just about ever present. And I've got one of our classic utility men that could play pretty much anywhere across the middle and front. I've got Scott Robinson.
And
again, that's where he probably pips Stevie Lawless a little bit. He was just there a little bit longer and probably played a little bit more of a role in terms of that run to the cup final as well. Was sensational in that kind of 14-game run that Davy Martindale had when he first took the job on. So I've got Robbo in my team, and he produced a couple of magical moments against Celtic as well. That goal in the 2-0 victory, the one to put us 2-1 up in the draw later that season just before COVID. So I've gone with Robbo there.
I think for me, Stephen Lawless, I think that season they got cut short due to COVID. I think that there was some stat as well that in the league he had contributed the most goal contributions to any team in the league. I just remember him that season just being absolutely tremendous for us. And, also that first year as well, filling in at right wing back and stuff like that. I thought he was a absolutely classy player. And, based off of, Scott Pittman being my number 10, as well as the striker, the partnership that those kind of three had, I think is arguably the best that we've had in this division as well over the last 6 years. Not to give too many spoilers away, but yeah, Robinson was actually somebody I was actually thinking of in the 10. Him and Pittman were the two that I was kind of balancing out against one another because, yeah, as you say, that kind of purple patch where he was, scoring all the time, got player of the month and everything like that led us to the cup final. Perhaps maybe the way things ended is maybe soured it a little bit, but no, I can absolutely see the thoughts of it. The player who scored the first goal for us in the Premiership after coming back up as well. Plenty of good moments. Yeah, scored at Hampden, scored against Celtic on a couple of occasions. Yeah, don't mind it. Pitts speaks for himself, right? Plenty of appearances, chipped in with goals and that, being like a mainstay in the team for what seems like 10 years now. Will be 10 years next season. Somebody who, maybe fans have kind of underappreciated him a little bit. Maybe the kind of the Pittman of the past is maybe not the exact same, but is that due to the team that's been in the last kind of 18 months? Don't know. I guess we'll see in the Championship next season if he's going to be a very valuable asset, which I'm confident he is going to be. Yeah. Anything else to add on to Pittman?
Nah, I can't. I mean, what else can you say about Scott Pittman? He's just about done it all at the football club, and I don't think anyone's ever going to replicate the number of appearances that Pitts will make for Livingston. I think it will be near on impossible. He's the record appearance holder, the most quiet, albeit when you do speak to him at like the Player of the Year events and even talking to him at the recent player sponsorship thing, he's always up for having a wee chat, and he's a really good character. And again, just think a good top professional, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the manager constantly goes to him on a regular basis, has him in the team just about every week. I think other players appreciate players like Pitts. He maybe does a lot of stuff without the ball that I think fans will always underappreciate. But I think if you're one of his teammates, I think if you were to go through the last 6 years, or just in terms of his 10 years at Livy, I think most players that have been at Livy would have him in their team. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I think I would question, to be honest, anybody who wouldn't have had him in their team if they were compiling one relating to this. Probably as much of a certainty as you can probably imagine, for sure. Aye, big questions would be asked of anybody who would be omitting him from this team, for sure. And then on the left wing, of course, Alan Forrest, absolutely tremendous player. No surprise that he's doing so well in a Hearts team that's just finished third place as well. I think somebody that their fans had to warm to a little bit, but kind of maybe a little bit similar to us. I don't think he maybe hit the ground completely running. Came into his own probably more the second season that he was at the club,
especially that last 6 months.
Aye, just absolutely unplayable. And yeah, you're talking about a time where Joe Newblade just came back from Arbroath and stuff like that, and Forrest was comfortably the better attacker output. You'd kind of say there. Yeah, an exciting player, my kind of player to watch for sure. And yeah, somebody I'm glad to see he's doing very well after moving on.
Right, centre forward. I don't think there's any debate here.
Yeah, a special mention to Bruce Anderson.
Yeah,
special mention to Ryan Hardy, but it's Lyndon Dykes, isn't it?
it's that big sexy Scottish kangaroo. It's Lyndon Dykes. What a player he was for that just over 12 months that we had him there. We used to get into the press room when we first started the podcast, and just about every week the press called Dykesy in because he was getting linked with regular moves. And again, I don't think it's any coincidence that just about every single opposition manager mentioned him by name. We had to do this to try and accommodate Dykes, tried to do this. I think that speaks volumes of him. He's a record sale that we've ever made, 1.75 going on to 2.5 million from his 12 months at the football club. I don't think Dykesy will ever be an out-and-out goal scorer. Maybe difference with him compared to the likes of a Ryan Hardy or the likes of a Bruce Anderson. I think they're more natural goal scorers. But in terms of what Dykes brought to the whole team, I think sometimes again probably went underappreciated by some. And I think now that he's a regular Scotland internationalist, I think Scotland fans are starting to see that as well, what he brings to the team as a whole, rather than just his goals. Albeit I think his goal output for Scotland's close to 1 in 3, which there's some much better goal scorers that have played for Scotland that would kill to have a return like that. And I loved him for his spell at Livingston. I'm still loving him. He's given me some of my best moments following Scotland. His equaliser, that comeback in Oslo, I was there for. He's still giving me magical moments as a Scotland supporter. So yeah, Lyndon Dykes is my number 9.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I mean, we had a player who all the other teams were massively concerned about. Like, we were going into games and teams were thinking, "Oh shit! Like, how are we going to stop?" Like, Celtic and Rangers were like, "How are we going to stop Lyndon Dykes?" Like, how many times would teams, play at one of the Old Firm and the focus and the build up be around one of our players? And yeah, he put them to the sword a few times with Celtic in particular. Christopher Julian will be
He still wakes up in cold sweats in the middle of the night.
exactly. So yeah, like it speaks for himself. His goal record here as well wasn't bad at all. Good personality as well. You can see the kind of effect he'd had on the team, and yeah, absolute no brainer. Definitely the centre forward for our best 11.
I remember interviewing Dykesy, and it was just before we played Celtic, and he scored the lob over Fraser Foster. And one of the comments he made was, "I like to piss people off." And I just thought, he's my number 9. Like, just had that Aussie kind of attitude, but kind of doesn't care about anyone's reputations, and as I say, he's gone on to do brilliant things for Scotland, part of a team that's qualified for back-to-back Euros. Played a major part in that night in Serbia and has played a major part in qualifying for this tournament as well. So, yeah, what a brilliant centre forward. And also liked about him when we done our preview, our video, our good luck message to the team going into the cup final, and we put a message out for anyone to send in any videos, and Lyndon Dykes was the first person to send a video in. He'd even dug out his old Livi training kit to shove on for it. So again, he obviously has very fond memories of Livingston as well, which I think speaks volumes of the guy. But maybe not go into so much detail about the next 11 that we're going to put together, which is our Dud 11. And we'll just go positions and maybe
They speak for themselves, I'm sure.
Yes, they speak for themselves. They'll send shivers
Actually,
down Livingston fans' spines.
I need to make sure I've actually.
I've gone 4-3-3 again, if that helps.
I think that's what I'm going for as well. Yeah. Or am I going to go for a 4-4-2? All right, so I'll have a think. But right, who's your goalkeeper?
Goalkeeper, I think on the whole we've been okay goalkeeper wise, and it's probably a little bit harsh, but I'm going to go Ross Stewart.
Okay.
I don't think he ever really covered himself in glory when he was between the sticks. It was probably between him and Robbie McCrory were my two that I would have gone for in goals.
Interesting, because I don't have either of those two.
Oh, right, okay.
I think this is one. I don't know if you've maybe just forgot, but it's one from the season. I've gone for Michael McGovern.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think I've just tried to blank out a lot of this season.
Yeah,
That's a good one, actually. Yeah, can I change?
because that's what I was thinking. I was like, we've probably not actually had anybody too bad. And then I remember there was about 4 games this season where, yeah, whenever a loan deal gets cut short like that, yeah, I don't think it speaks good volumes, to be fair.
Yeah, and even when I was going through the goalkeepers and I was going season by season, I was like, I think that's quite harsh, quite harsh. But yeah, that's probably I'm switching. I'm going Michael McGovern. Right back. Now, I found this one fairly difficult as well because Nicky was obviously
Mm-hmm.
4 years very consistent. Jack McMillan filled in for him, who I'm a big fan of Jack McMillan. So I found this one quite difficult. I was trying to think of players that have come in and just not really done anything for us. So I went with Welsh Hayes.
Oh, I have gone for the one appearance wonder, James Brown.
James Brown. Oh man, can I change again? Do you know he's went on to win a cup double in this country?
Exactly. Mental.
Oh man, I feel like I'm selling some players short here. Right, my next one. I love him. He's my bald French prince at centre half, Ceci Pepe. I've gone for big Ceci Pepe at centre half.
Okay, so I had a position that was freed up, and so mine's is now a back five.
Oh right, okay.
Because I completely forgot about him. But I was being overly harsh to a certain player, a current member of the squad who made the Dud 11, but he's not been that bad to make it. So yeah, Ceci Pepe, I'll have him. So he's in now a back five.
Right, okay. So you've got James Brown as your right wing back.
Yeah.
Ceci Pepe inside him. Right, so
Yep.
I'm a back four, and I've got as my other centre half as a current member of the squad who's activated a release clause fairly recently, and it's Mikey Devlin. Sorry, Mikey. And then my left back is one of Brunei's all-time favourite Livingston players, Ibra Savan.
I also have both of them. And my final centre half is Michael Nottingham.
Michael Nottingham. Yeah, I hummed and hawed about which one I would put in. But I think I expected more from Devlin. I think it's probably where
That's fair.
I thought he could, he's played 3 times for Scotland. He's had albeit I know his injuries have probably played a big part in why the fact he's at Livingston in the first place, but that was probably why I edged towards him.
Mm.
I do think there's a decent centre half in Mikey Devlin, in fairness, but
It's just not worked out.
it's just not worked out for us this season. Right, I've got a midfield 3. I've gone for Drubral Diani, one of our first signings after after Brexit came into play, and it took him until the last 2 games of the season to actually play. So Drubral Diani is one of mine. I've also got Ben Williamson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
From his loan at Rangers. I remember his red card that he got. Was it a midweek game against Dundee United he got?
Yes.
And then I've got Scott Bitsindu as my midfield 3.
This is incredible, Ian, because we don't have any duplicates.
Oh, wow. Right. This is good. This is good. I like this.
I've only got two midfielders here, to be fair. Number 1, Mo Sangari.
Sangari, okay.
And I've opted for Adam Lewis.
Adam Lewis. I think there was a player in Adam Lewis.
Nah, he was shite. He took 3 kicks and that was it. Dragged a cross out that gave Motherwell a corner for us to miss it in top 6. He came from Liverpool. Enough said.
See, I thought there was a player in Adam Lewis, personally. I think he was very unlucky when he was with us as well. Did he not break his foot in his loan spell that he
Played
had?
like-
fairly
like it.
Yeah, played like it. So we've got, right, so after reevaluating, we've matched our goalkeepers, matched our right backs, matched 2 centre halves, and matched the left back, right? Our midfields are completely different. No, my front 3.
Freeze.
There was a few that could have made this, but I've tried to think again. Expectation to end product. I've gone Chuck Wemaker, the infamous subbed on, subbed off after about 7 minutes against, was it Aberdeen? I've gone centre forward, in between them, Anthony Stokes. And then left hand side, I've gone Greg Wild.
Greg Wild. We have 2 of the same.
Right, Chuck Wemaker, Stokes.
Yep. So they 2 are kind of flanking a centre forward. And I guess it's just more so of what this player represents, I guess. It's Curtis Guthrie.
Curtis Guthrie. You've really
fact
gone
that
for the current group a lot more than I have. I've tried my best.
I think it's more so like, 2 goals in 50 odd games. The fact this season we persisted playing that, we had a goal scorer on the bench. That interview after that, was it a Motherwell game last season where we got pumped 3-0 or something like that? Yeah.
The bubblegum interview.
Yeah. All I can, that's the front 3 for me.
I mean, let's put those 2 teams up against each other and see what happens. Anthony Stokes, can we just talk about Anthony Stokes? I remember when we signed him, and he was one of those classics where I was like, see if we get, like, this is a 75% gamble, right? 25% if this works. Oh, wow, this works. And what a terrible 2 weeks.
Yeah, didn't even get him on the pitch.
I think we got him on the pitch for half an hour of a bounce game, essentially, is what we got from Anthony Stokes. We saw more of him doing an announcement than actually minutes on the pitch. Oh dear.
Yeah. Not a great highlight reel from those players, I would say.
I would agree. It's a tough sell. But yeah, you've managed to change my mind on a couple that, you always get these duds that just kind of go under the radar and you forget about a little bit. James Brown is one of those. He made his debut at Celtic Park, our first game in the top flight, and that was the last time we ever saw him. I still can't believe that man has gone on to win a cup double in this country. Unbelievable. let's talk kind of some little top fives then. Top 5 games that spring to mind. Any particular games that spring to mind over the last 6 years?
Yeah, the 5-0 against Hearts is always going to be one that stays because, just pandemonium. I don't think anybody could just believe what was going on. Everybody was just so shocked. But yeah, just such a great night. Sticking it against Hearts as well was, it was magical. Yeah, very, very good.
Yeah, the 5-0 against Hearts is difficult to get past. See, when you watch highlights of that game, it's difficult to comprehend just how quickly that capitulation happened from Hearts. Like, between the penalty being given that Craig Halkett puts away to the red card, who was it that got sent off? Was it Arnold Doom that got sent off for a second yellow? Dolly Menga put in the entire Hearts squad and coaching staff on their arse, and then nutmegging Slimao, and then Ryan Hardy. Like, genuinely, you were barely sitting down from celebrating the previous goal to then jumping up again celebrating the goal. And it's probably one of the best tweets I've ever seen, which was, "We're not having any technical difficulties, we just haven't scored in 4 minutes," or something like that. that night's going to be very, very difficult to beat. And the fact that Craig Levein came out and described us as prime PSG afterwards, God, what we would do for that Livingston team once again. But other honorary mentions, Dolly Menga's goal against Rangers, the 1-0 victory not long after we came up. Obviously, the 2-0 against Celtic, the 1-0 against Celtic, I'm sure live long in the
Any
memory.
positive result against the Old Firm, because to be fair, there has been quite a few. And, for a lot of us, we're probably not used to that. And, I think for a lot of teams in Scotland, probably aren't used to as many kind of results as we got against the Old Firm over the years. I think this season's only the first one that we haven't taken points off them at all, which is quite an achievement for thinking over, 5-year kind of period for the smallest budgeted team against, two kind of giants in the country. Yeah, beating Celtic for the first time was, absolutely massive. The first couple of games in the top flight where we beat Rangers and then drew with Celtic at home as well. Yeah, I think that those are the kind of things that were, really powered us on, I would imagine.
Yeah, talking about those first games, a game I always think back fondly on was when we beat Hibs 2-1 early doors when Gary Holt had just come in. Sean Burns scored a brilliant goal again, just chopping in and out of 3 or 4 Hibs players and then rolling it in the far corner, and then Pitt slamming one in the top corner to win that game. That felt like a proper, we're back in the top flight. You've taken a scalp off one of the big guns at that point. Another couple of games that just spring to mind, the cup semi-final win against St Mirren. Awful game of football, but just reaching a cup final nonetheless is a monumental achievement, and probably couple of my favourite games, the 3-2 up at Ross County, the Tom Parks game, the header in the 95th minute. I always think of that. That was not long after COVID, and in the space of a week, I'd seen Scotland score that 95th minute winner against Israel, Scott McTominay, and then that goal, and it just made you think, this is what you miss about football after a year of not being able to get into stadiums. And then probably like the 3-2 at Easter Road when Alan Forrest scored. That was a right good game as well, actually. A right good game of football. But any goals that stick out in your mind?
Well, I guess just kind of before that, even just like that 14 game unbeaten run during COVID, where we're randomly the best team in the world. Like, I think that's one that, obviously the world was in like a dire place at the time, and we received a big massive boost by the fact that we decided to be the best team in the country. Goal wise, one of them that falls into mind for that was a winner against Kilmarnock. I remember Scott Robinson coming off the bench.
I've got that one down. Yep.
A delightful dink over the goalkeeper. I remember going quite chaotic in the living room at that one. Jack Stubbs is
I've got that one too.
Thunder bastard against Ross County. Tom Parks, you kind of briefly mentioned there, obviously the goals against the Old Firm that kind of won us games, the Lyndon Dykes one, Dolly Menga. Anything else that kind of comes to mind, just from...
I've got Jet against Hamilton, the flick-up volley. The flick-up volley from Jet, that one instantly springs to mind. You just saw somebody produce a Thierry Henry-esque moment against Hamilton Accies. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I've got pretty much all those goals. in amongst there. I've also got Alan Forrest at Hibs. Classic Alan Forrest finish, left-hand side, whip it in the far corner. I've got that goal. Stephen Kelly's one at Tynecastle last season as well. Can remember quite fondly.
Keegan Jacobs' free kick against Motherwell.
Yeah, that one as well. I had Sean Burns against Hibs as well, early doors when we first got promoted. But in terms of moments during the podcast, Angus, yours is obviously a bit different from mine because I've been on from day one, needing to listen to Andrew Semple grump and groan on a weekly basis. But what are kind of moments that stick out for you doing the podcast?
Yeah, I think any moment, I think you'll agree, where we've been able to talk to players, ex-players, people involved in the club has been absolutely tremendous, I would say. That's kind of been very enjoyable things, speaking to current players, like Sir Bartley and Keegan Jacobs in my book, and then a couple of our cup winning side, Scott McLaughlin and Burton O'Brien as well, are always kind of things and always memories kind of going to look back on and, be kind of proud of. I think as well, just in terms of us being one of the few podcasts that have hosted a regular segment for the women's game in that as well, and then kind of encouraged and being able to make that a part of like our identity in that as well, where we've been encouraging that kind of side. I don't know how many other teams, have extensively covered as much as we have, and I think that it's been good to have the opportunities to get within like the women's setup, and obviously joined like the media team last year off of the kind of the back of all this kind of stuff as well. So I think that's I think that I'm very, very proud of, and that we've been able to help develop through for Scottish football podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. I had kind of covering the women's side as they won the championship last season. And as you say, it's been very good, almost early doors with the women's side. We've covered the games, and I struggle to see many other club podcasts that have a regular segment dedicated to their women's side and kind of regularly cover them. Also at the start of the season, managing to get Mike on, which was the first time we'd managed to get one of the coaching staff on to kind of have a preview for the season, which was also really good, which you covered yourself. Another couple of moments just talking. I've been involved in countless of the interviews, and I've got to speak to some genuine heroes of mine growing up as a Livingston fan. But probably the two peak ones, and ones that I had as my dream kind of guest to have on from the onset, was Jim Leishman and Stuart Lovell. They were probably the two that I was a giddy little boy on the other end of the Zoom call while speaking to them. And Jim Leishman just had me smiling from start to finish, just listening to him. I barely interviewed Jim. Jim just spoke, to be brutally honest. And that interview it also came at a really good time. It was not long after we'd lost the League Cup final, and I think fans were maybe a little bit down, and it was, Jim's obviously such a positive, uplifting character, and I think it was actually good to just bring that to life and give fans a little bit of a boost at a time where they were maybe feeling a bit down after that cup final. Stuart Lovell as well, just brilliant to have him on. The one thing I'll say about when you get players on that have been at the club previously is they never have just a normal 4 or 5 years at the football club. It's that's the thing that's been such a thing when I go back and look at their careers and go, God, it was absolutely batshit crazy whilst you were here, wasn't it? Couple of mentions. Bobby Barr was brilliant when he was on. So funny, so many great stories from a kind of good spell when we'd gone down the divisions and worked our way back up. Gary Boland as manager, some brilliant stories from that. Having Kyle and Keegan both on as well, talking about their spells at the club, that was brilliant. And having so many of the cup winning team, Roddy McKenzie was a brilliant guest. Burton O'Brien, Scott McLaughlin, who have been on as well. They were both fantastic when they've been on. They've been on twice each as well. But there's been some right good guests that we've had on over the years, and it's been an absolute privilege getting to speak to them. And as I say, some genuine heroes of mine and some of my favourite ever Livingston players. And you get the chance to just speak one-on-one with them. It's genuinely such a pleasure having them on. That's another couple of just funny highlights that spring to mind when I've done interviews. Marvin Bartley coming in during John Guthrie's interview, And after we'd just finished talking about Walsall getting relegated the previous season, Marv comes in and goes, "How does it feel to get relegated?" And and just wound John Guthrie up. Gary Holt coming in when I was chatting to Robbie McCrory and said, "Oh, this will be boring." That was another good one. And Stevie Lawless trying to get out of yoga as well. He was a brilliant guest very early on that interview, but Stevie Lawless doing everything he could to get out of yoga class was pretty brilliant viewing. But yeah, as I say, there's been countless guests. And by the way, also just a shout out to all the guests from opposition clubs that have been on the podcast over the years. We've had some terrific fan media guests on, giving us a much better insight than we could ever give of your football clubs. So a massive shout out to those folk as well. And we've made some genuine good friends out of that. One last mention I'm going to give it to Nicky Devlin for Devlin's Dilemmas. Our little segment we did during COVID off the back of a question time where Nicky Devlin sent us in the question, would you rather fingers for toes or toes for fingers? And we got a little idea because there wasn't anything to cover during COVID other than putting out the odd player interview or ex-player interview, and reached out to Nicky and was like, do you fancy doing a weekly Devlin's Dilemma just for a bit of content on the podcast? And I remember Nicky sending in these videos and he gradually started to look more and more like Tom Hanks from Castaway. I was just expecting to see Wilson in the background at some point in one of these videos he was sending us, because obviously you couldn't get your hair cut, couldn't get a shave or anything like that, and he gradually just looked more and more dishevelled as the weeks went by during COVID, as I'm sure all of us did. But Nicky, what an unbelievably good sport he was, sending us in those videos and allowing us to kind of post that. So that was kind of my other little highlight from doing the podcast.
Yeah, I guess as well the other opportunities that we've been able to be fortunate to come around. You know, the fact that we've both appeared on elements of the BBC. I mean, I was on Sports Scene. I think you've been on a couple of the radio channels and stuff like that. Being able to write pieces for, I believe, the BBC and for Sky Sports as well. The Open Goal podcast has been very kind to us as well and had us on a good couple of times. Those kind of things as well have just been absolutely great, especially for me looking to, break into like the media and become like a journalist and stuff like that. They've been very good experiences and stuff like that. And yeah, if there's anybody listening, I've just graduated and want to give me a job, then absolutely fire that my way. But yeah, I think that those things have been, even just from, a fan kind of viewpoint, they've just been very enjoyable things. And it's just been very kind of humbling as well to have been recognised by some of the biggest media outlets in the country. And, I'm hoping that people have enjoyed our appearances on them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been given opportunities I never thought I would get whilst being a Livingston supporter, as you say. Featured on STV News when we reached the League Cup final, featured on BBC Radio. I had about a millisecond stint on Sports Scene once during COVID. Also, my voice featured on a View from the Terrace, just kind of BBC podcast as well, Scottish Football Podcast with the BBC, been on that a couple of times. Open Goal's probably the most notable one, and thank you so much to Mikey Pentland for asking us on repeatedly for that, and always really good catching up with the fans that do that as well. That's been a really, really great opportunity for us as a podcast to get on that. But no pressure, Angus. Our last media student that came onto this podcast is now commentating with BN Sports, and he was covering Lionel Messi just last season, so no pressure for you.
Yeah. Just a shame I don't know any French.
But, talking about that, that's probably quite a big highlight for me to see Bruni. I've known Bruni since he was a kid, and he sat next to me at Livingston games for years and years in the main stand in section B1. To see him come on our podcast as a media student looking to get a little bit of experience to now going on, and as I say, just last season was commentating on Lionel Messi playing for PSG as they lifted the Ligue 1 title. That's good. You get a bit of positivity and a good vibe from that, and it's good to see him going on and progressing his career. And I would obviously say exactly the same for you. I'm sure you'll go on and have a flourishing career in journalism, mate. And hopefully this podcast has managed to help you achieve that as well. But yeah, we could go on forever being absolutely nostalgic. There's so many highlights from doing this podcast. Probably one of the biggest lows was doing a podcast straight after losing the League Cup final. That one was pretty depressing. But there are so many so many brilliant highlights over the last 6 years, and yeah, it's been since we put that tweet out on Friday. It's loads of kind of little memories have just started flooding back from when we've been recording, and it's been really nice. And thank you so much for all the messages we've received as well. It's been quite overwhelming how much you've enjoyed the podcast over the last 6 years.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure being a part of this, and hopefully everybody who's listened have very much enjoyed it. It's going to be quite weird that people are going to go, oh yeah, some people not saying, oh, I heard he's like saying this in the podcast, I agree, blah blah blah, or whatever. With the women's team and stuff like that as well, they know that they're quite keen listeners and that. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure kind of doing this. Just a final thank you to the likes of yourself, Euan, Callum Waugh, Callum Brown, and Andy Semple, even like Carson coming on that as well, for making the podcast what it is. And I only knew Bruni before I joined this, but now I'd like to consider us friends in that now as well, which has been a very good thing that's kind of came out of the podcast, and that's led to kind of other things, become part of like the GS side and all of that. And yeah, just kind of being a part of the podcast has made me feel much closer to the club in general, and kind of built that up. And yeah, plenty of things to look back on and be nostalgic about in the future. And it's been an absolutely fantastic run, and something that's been well worthy of our time. So yeah, massive thank you.
Oh mate, you're going to make me great. Nah, thank you so much, Angus. You're the second longest serving host on this podcast, I believe, after you joined us during the COVID season. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting the podcast with you, and thank you so much for all the time that you've given up and dedicated to the podcast over the years. And yeah, massive thanks to Andy, who I started off the podcast with. Bruni as well played a big part over the years, doing a lot of interviews and things like that with at the time the current playing squad. And Waugh obviously had a little stint involved with it as well. And I'll be catching up with Semple and Waugh over in Germany in the next couple of weeks for a week in Stuttgart, which I'm sure could get pretty messy. But yeah, just a huge thank you to all our listeners. At the end of the day, there's no point us doing this podcast if folk weren't tuning in to watch it. And it has been seriously overwhelming the last few days, all the positive messages we've received and how disappointed you are. It's nice to see folk are disappointed that we're giving up the podcast and aren't celebrating it, which is which is a big plus point. But yeah, just a massive thank you to everyone. Hopefully this summer a few things can be clarified behind the scenes at our wonderful mad little football club that is Livingston FC, and it can be a really positive season in the Championship next year. And I'm sure you'll be there, Angus, like myself, every step of the way for hopefully another roller coaster watching Livingston FC.
Yeah, absolutely. With our shockingly priced season tickets, still in debates. Of course, we will be there as always. We're the daft ones who have followed the club from the third division and stuff like that. The season in the Championship will be great fun for us, and we'll be catching up with each other there. And our season in SWPL too for our ladies team as well. Yeah, and I guess just to round off, you can head to Talk Livi podcast at Libsyn.com, or will that still be up there? Just go to Spotify and find our old episodes if you want to catch up on anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Folk can still find the episodes on YouTube, the usual podcast streaming sites. If you do wish to go back and listen to some of the interviews we've kind of mentioned there, that's always appreciated. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in over the last 6 years. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed the content that we've put out, and hopefully managed to bring you just a little bit closer to the football club at times as well. And let's hope for a good season in the Championship following the Lothians' finest football team.
This is the place from which Livingston, oh Livingston, the Armenville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premiership.